Tweeter?
No one.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Gators Online Show. I am Keith Niebuhr. That is senior Gators reporter Zach Alberverdi, also known as an often special guest on the Paul Feinbaum Show. Occasionally, we get him to come back down to my level. He's big time.
In high top, too. Shout out to the high top boys.
That's right, Zach Alberverdi again. Zach, it's been a busy week, my friend. It never stops in Gainesville. We always say that, but it really hasn't stopped for about the last 6 weeks. Florida fired Billy Napier on October 19th. The search began for his successor. And last Sunday, it was revealed that Jon Sumrall would be the new head coach of the Florida Gators. And you and I had a chance to cover his press conference the following day in Gainesville. We obviously did a show right after that, but now we've had more time to digest this. And obviously, Jon Sumrall, Zach, has had one hellaciously busy week. Had to fly to Gainesville, then had to fly back to New Orleans. He's got the conference championship game in the American Conference Friday night against North Texas. This guy's got a lot going on right now.
He does, and it's been very impressive to see the job that he's done on his first week. Obviously, being able to come and knock it out of the park with the opening presser. We shared our rapid reaction here on the Gators Online YouTube channel right afterwards, but it hasn't stopped since then. Like the two coordinator hires that he made, he knocked those out of the park. Being able to get Miles Graham to commit pretty much minutes after his introductory press conference, he knocked that out of the park. And obviously there's going to be more players to come, and we'll talk about that. But then to go and keep this recruiting class intact, most of the time when you have a coaching change and there's a transition class, you have a lot of turnover, and a lot of the guys that are committed to the previous coach don't end up sticking and don't end up signing. And that wasn't really the case at all. Ford only ends up losing two guys of all the ones that were committed prior to the coaching change. So on the recruiting front, on the coordinator front, and then certainly just from a first impression on the fan base front, it's been a great first week on the job for Jon.
And when he was hired, obviously, let's recap this. It was a rough weekend for people like me and you who had to monitor message boards and give up our entire lives for that. And it could be comical at times, but we understood where the angst was coming from. I mean, everybody was thinking Lane Kiffin. That's number one. It's Lane or bust. And, once that mentality seeps in, not just fans, by the way, I'm not going to sit here and knock the fans, Zach. You and I were thinking the same thing. A lot of the sourcing was that Florida continued to feel good, and it looked like it was going down that path. And when it didn't happen, it was sort of a big letdown for everybody else. And you, in fact, broke the story a week ago Friday that they were kind of going in other directions. Florida was, It wasn't going to happen, basically. I mean, at a certain level, it becomes a he said kind of thing, but they were going in different directions. Let's put it that way. So those next couple of days were just, the fan base was down. I mean, you're coming off a 4-8, breathing fire, 4-8 season, firing a guy from Billy Napier, who came from a Group of 5 school. And my God, if this guy, Scott Strickland, the AD, hires another Group of 5 coach, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm done. I'm not giving any more money. And it was understandable, really. I mean, okay, some of it was over the top, but you could certainly see where the angst, as I said, was coming from. The Florida fans have been through a lot the last, few years. So when they settled on Jon Sumrall last Sunday, again, still angst. And people were said, well, you know what's going to happen next? There's going to be this giant PR campaign to make him look good. And that happens, of course. But the PR campaign that has actually has come from all the good that Jon Sumrall has done. Sometimes it's contrived. Some schools can make their next hire, any hire, look like Vince Lombardi, Zach. But Jon Sumrall's moves since the minute he's been hired, I can't think of one that hasn't been on point. He had a players meeting. Some of the players came out of that meeting telling people that you and I are close with that this guy's got a new energy that we haven't seen in a while. They liked it. He spoke to the media. The media was like, hey, this guy's got some energy. The fans got to see the same press conference. They said the same thing. The donors in the room, the high donors in the room when he was speaking, they were excited. The players sitting in the back row on the edges of their seats, like they were excited. Steve Spurrier nodding the whole time he's talking. Urban Meyer nodding the whole time he's talking. Danny Werfel laughing and nodding. And everybody immediately seemed to buy in. And it wasn't like the gun to the head to buy in. It was like, hey, I'm really buying in. So just a really, the week he's had, I don't think it could have gone much better. I mean, look, doesn't mean look, Zach, he hadn't won any games yet. Hadn't lost any either, by the way. But if you're going to say, what would you need to do? Well, you need to impress certain people. You need to speak to the fans. He did that.
Speak to the players too. You know what I mean?
Spoke to the players, but not just talking, speaking to them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And have you seen a step? Have you seen a misstep so far, Zach? Honestly,
no, I have not. I'll tell a cool story about Miles Graham. I mentioned that he was, I guess, officially the first commitment for Jon Sumrall, at least on social media. They got together after his introductory presser. They took a picture together, and then Miles made the post and said, "Let's do it, coach." And basically letting Gator Nation know that he was staying. And yes, he's a UF legacy, and he was probably going to stay no matter what, sure. But I think the story of how that happened and the context is key. And it does speak to exactly what you just described, Keith, and that was the immediate reaction to his post-game presser. Miles was in the room. He was one of several players that attended the press conference. I was told from a source in the program that after the press conference, Miles Graham waited around to get that picture with Jon Sumrall. He knew that he was going into that room to do some of the content that they shot for signing day. He knew he was heading there. And I was told that Miles Graham hung around to get a picture with coach and make that post. That was not something that was planned. That was not something that they asked Miles to do. It was something that he wanted to do. And he wanted to get that out there. So the fact that he moved Miles in that way with his introductory press conference, I think speaks to the way a lot of people felt when they heard him talk. And I think another guy who's moved the needle this week, Keith, and I got to give credit to him, is Danny Werfel. Look, there was some of that out there was Florida's going to put this big PR push on Sumrall. Look, Florida and any school is going to do a PR campaign on its new head football coach.
That's right.
That is not like that was going to happen no matter what. They were going to round up Steve Spurrier and any other voices in Gator Nation that carry weight and try to get them to comment on the new coach. That was going to happen no matter what. What's different about this situation, and I'll say situation because Danny has gone out repeatedly and said he wasn't paid to be part of the coaching search. He told me when I interviewed him that he volunteered to do it, that he's not getting paid to go out here and do these podcasts, and he's not doing PR. But he did share with me that he kind of gets frustrated with Scott Strickland that he doesn't come out and address rumors and some of the narratives that get created around a search that Danny was participating in and investing a lot of time and effort into on his own dime. Again, he was not getting paid. And, Scott has just taken the high road. He addressed some of the rumors this week, and we wrote about it at Gators Online. But I think Danny he's tired of biting his tongue. And he's come out and he's been on a podcast run this week, and he's gone on several shows and addressed specifics about the search and what took place from his perspective and responded to some of the reports and rumors out there. And I think if we're talking about PR and a way to make the fan base feel better, man, Danny has done it. Like, you can question some things maybe coming from the UAA. You're not going to question Danny Werfel. Like, that dude is a straight shooter. And I think the way that he has represented himself and the search, it's been enlightening and it's been good to hear. And if you missed some of his comments to me and also Scott Strickland, you can go read that story on Gators Online just to hear what they had to say about the Lane Kiffin search and pursuit and how and why they pivoted to Jon Sumrall. And I think they feel happy about how it ended.
Yeah, I mean, look, like we said, we knew that the PR campaign was going to start. It always does. And there was always going to be a level of skepticism. Again, we get that. I know some people think, Keith, you and Zach, you guys are puppets, shills, and whatever, man. When a guy's hired, you're interviewing people and you're writing what they're telling you.
We have a job to do, which is to share what people are saying.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a good hire, but I also don't know whether it's a bad hire. We'll see. Nobody knows. We'll see. But there have been people that have questioned the integrity and the honesty of Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer over this. And I'm going to tell you something. I know Spurrier. You know Spurrier. I covered Urban Meyer briefly. Don't know him that well. But nobody's telling either one of those guys what to do. There was some people were saying they were dangling the carrot to Urban Meyer to get the Ring of Honor deal at Florida that he's got. Listen,
I mean, Spurrier was taking shots on his podcast at Billy Napier his entire tenure.
You're not telling those two guys what to say. I'm just telling you right now. I'm sorry, but if you don't know those guys, you would know that if you thought that, it was a ridiculous thought, quite frankly. Nobody's telling Urban Meyer what to say or think. Again, it doesn't mean he's going to be right about Jon Sumrall, who he likes a lot. It only means this is his
But it doesn't mean that Scott Strickland's dangling him like a puppet from behind.
The guy's rich.
Screen.
He's rich. He's on TV every week, and he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. Look, covering the University of Florida is one of the great honors of my life. Probably it is for you too, Zach. We both are local boys. It's a big deal. But we have to understand the Ring of Honor, as big of a deal as it is to Urban Meyer, it might not be as big a deal as being rich, celebrating your wealth, being in the College Football Hall of Fame. I'm sure it's an honor, but he didn't get in that to do that, vice versa.
Sure.
Now, would you mind saying some nice things about this coach? Maybe that was it.
But no, I don't think it was that, Keith. I think that the reason that he was there and the reason that we saw Urban on Monday and why he's been involved in this process is because of how involved he was in talking to Sumrall and then sharing his opinions and recommendations to Strickland. Like, this isn't just him showing up to support the program and doing UF a solid because they put him in the Hall of Fame. Like, he's there because he got involved in the search, because he was talking to Jon, getting a pulse on him, kind of figuring out who he was, and over the course of their conversations, fell in love with the guy. And I confirmed this with Scott Strickland. Urban Meyer recommended him for the job. Said, this is the guy you need to hire. So I think that's why he's here. That's why he's involved in speaking out.
So it's the opposite of what people think.
Yes, it is the opposite.
So again, home run week. Look, whether you question the hire or not.
Yeah, it wasn't a home run hire, but it's a home run week.
Yeah, you can look, we're not going to tell anybody how to think, man. I mean, a lot of you are 10 times smarter than me, to be honest with you. You can think any way you want. But from that moment on, how have they done? How has he done? So even if you didn't like the hire, it's hard to say that things haven't gone well since the hire was made. And Zach, transitioning into the next part of this is the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator hires this week.
Sure. We'll get an ad read in?
Yeah, get the ad read in and we'll go right to those two guys.
Absolutely. Let's give a shout out, as we do each and every week, to Game Time. Get that pulled up for y'all. And obviously this has been a fantastic college football season. We are here for championship week, and then there's going to be a ton of bowl games and postseason matchups that take place, and you aren't going to want to miss it. But as you guys can imagine, getting your hands on tickets like that to those games are going to be very difficult. I've been able, and my family has, to be able to get their hands on some difficult tickets this season, including Florida, Texas, including Florida, Mississippi State, including Florida, Tennessee. Each and every one of those games this season, we were able to go to the Game Time app, find tickets right in the section we wanted, right at the price that we were looking for. And it was incredibly easy to use. And what you see is what you get. Like the tickets that they had listed throughout the app was exactly what it was when you went to check out. So, and there were some really cheap tickets, believe it or not, even to some of these games early in the season when Florida's season hadn't tanked yet. So there's going to be tickets available for any of these conference championship games that you want to get to this weekend, any of these bowl games coming up, and playoff matchups as well. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code ON3. That's ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download the Game Time app today.
All right, Zach. So earlier this week, after Jon Sumrall's big opening day press conference, he made his first coordinator hire, and that person is Brad White. He's been the defensive coordinator at Kentucky since 2019 with the Wildcats. Brad White's defense is ranked in the top 32 in scoring 4 times since 2019, and with the best of 11th in 2022, and 3 times Kentucky placed in the top 25 in total yards. He is a guy that had actually worked with Jon Sumrall before at Kentucky, one of the more well-respected defensive coordinators in the SEC. He's been at Kentucky, so you don't necessarily notice that. But he was making, last I checked, $1.4 million a year, which tells you, think about this, Zach, Kentucky paying a coordinator over $1 million a year, okay? That tells you a lot. Before Kentucky, he was a defensive coach assistant with the Indianapolis Colts for a handful of years. One of the more well-respected defensive assistants in college football. He's already in Gainesville. He's already working. And that was the first big hire. That was a kind of an attention getter, Zach. I think that got everybody thinking, okay, maybe this is going to be, every coach says we're going to go get the best guys, right? And sometimes you get them and sometimes you don't. The plans don't always work out. But this was sort of an eye-opener, would you say, Zach? You're on mute. Yep.
It was, Keith. And to be honest, like the big question that people had was who's the OC going to be? But I think it was just as intriguing and up in the air maybe as to who the DC would be, because I know that, I was told that, maybe that discussion and what and how that was going to get worked out or not at Auburn might have been one of the reasons why he didn't end up there. So I think it was going to be fascinating and interesting to see who he hired as his defensive coordinator, because again, he is a defensive guy. So that's a very important hire for someone that he's kind of given trust to on that side of the ball, and to be able to land Brad White, a guy that he's worked with, and a guy that has coached in this league and had the success that he's had. I don't think you could have got much better of a pairing for him, and kind of just for him to be able to come in as a head coach and feel like he can hand over the keys to that defense and let that guy run it. And I mean, look, it's been very impressive to see what he's done. Kentucky's defense wasn't as good this year, but his first 6 seasons at Kentucky, they had a top 45 defense each of the 6 years. Now, top 45, maybe not crazy, but for 6 years in a row to be like that, that's pretty impressive at a place like Kentucky, where you cannot get the type of talent that you can other places. So to be a top 45 defense each of those 6 years, now it's not like they weren't that every year. They had 1 year where they were the number 12 defense in the country, number 12 in 2022. And then 2 other years they were top 25 in 2021 and 2019. And one of those years they were 20. So 3 of the 6 years they were in the top 25, and then the other 3 they were a top 45 defense. Yeah. I mean, that's very, very, very impressive consistency at a place like Kentucky, again, where he's going to have much better talent to work with at the University of Florida. And you pair him with some of the defensive assistants that he's going to be able to work with. I think Sumrall is going to bring some over from Tulane. And then obviously Florida's going to have the opportunity to add anybody else that they want to. Maybe Gerald Chapman gets retained. But it's shaping up to be a really good defensive staff. But it starts with Brad White. And what a great get for Jon Sumrall.
Well, if you think about this, Kentucky is rarely in the top 15, 20 range in the recruiting rankings. Florida is rarely outside of that range. So you start thinking, okay, so this is what he's been able to do with these guys. And that's no slight against those players, but it's predominantly a basketball school. One other thing is, when you think of Kentucky football under Mark Stoops, what do you think of? And Mark Stoops being a defensive guy, you think defense. And Brad White ran that defense for a lot of years. Here's something that I found interesting. I talked to Kevin Steele, well-known defensive coach in college football over the last quarter century. In fact, in 2 years ago, he was Nick Saban's defensive coordinator in Saban's last year at Alabama. He had a great run at Auburn as defensive coordinator when they were in the national championship picture back in 2017. Before that, stints as DC at LSU, at Clemson, and the guy's well-traveled, Kevin Steele, right? So he talked about Brad White with me this week, and he said the thing is, he's experienced, and let's be honest, Kentucky is a good job and it's a wonderful place, but he goes up against giants week after week, and he has the ability, which I think is the greatest, among the greatest traits in coaching, to do more with less. More with less, Zach. He's no longer going to have to do more with less. He's going to do even versus even or more versus less.
Sure.
Kevin Steele also said this. He said that the good thing is at Florida, you can get the best of the best. You can do what you want to. And what he meant was schemes. Kevin Steele said that, we tend to get too much into what a guy does in a specific year. Most of the best coaches mold their systems and schemes, and on offense too, and we'll talk about that in a minute, to the talent. So every year the talent may be the same at relatively the same at Alabama. So they can do press man, they can do all these things. But at Kentucky, it's going to go up and it's going to go down. All right. And so he had to constantly morph and adapt according to Kevin Steele. I said, look, the guy's defenses have been competitive every single year. And this is not a guy that he's great friends with. So it's not like he's promoting his friend. He followed him from afar, Zach. All the great coaches, as you know, and everybody listening knows, they're watching the other guys. They're trying to find things that they can pick up too. So he's always been an admirer of Brad White. And so I thought those were some interesting comments. This is a guy that is very well thought of. The hire has been pretty much universally praised on social media by football minds. And that led, Zach, to the next coordinator hire, the one that really got everyone's attention.
Yeah.
When Jon Sumrall was hired, you learned right away that there were basically, I did the hot board, but it was your information, just to be clear. I'll give you credit begrudgingly. But you had three main candidates, right? Buster Faulkner of Georgia Tech. You had Joey Halsey of Tennessee, and I think the third one was Cade Bell. Cade Bell of Pitt, the son of legendary Gators quarterback Kerwin Bell. But you knew right away, and through our reporting, we learned that, look, they had one guy they really wanted, and it was Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech, and they were able to get that done, Zach. But there was some chatter throughout the week that maybe this wouldn't happen.
Yeah, and I went on High Top and kind of teased at that a little bit, and I know you had asked me to come on the board and do it, but I don't want to steal some of your thunder, because you dropped the scoop on our Gators Online message board that it was Buster Faulkner that they really wanted, and to be honest, I think that was who his offensive coordinator was also going to be at Auburn as well. Now we had been told that, even though it was clear that he was the number one, and that it might not happen. And it wasn't necessarily because of him, but it was maybe for some family reasons that he wouldn't come. Also, the possibility of him getting a head coaching job, that was maybe on the table. And then also as well, there still was the chance that he could stay at Georgia Tech. But ultimately, Jon Sumrall and Florida are able to get him to come to Gainesville and his family. And for them to make that happen and to pair him with Brad White, I mean, look, you go from the previous coach that you hired, and no disrespect to Patrick Toney, because I think that he's about to be an SEC defensive coordinator again here pretty soon. But coming over, he was young and had not called plays in the SEC before, and a lot of people frowned upon that. And obviously on the offensive side of the ball, you had Billy calling the plays, and that never changed. But, for Florida on the defensive side, they went through two young DCs. And I thought Austin Armstrong came in the second year and did a little bit better job than Toney did, although the system and the personnel was probably a little bit more stable and in place than what Patrick had to work with. But regardless, that defense didn't get right until Ron Roberts got its hands on it. And having to start off that tenure with a young defensive coordinator that had his growing pains calling plays in the SEC, that was not a recipe for success, especially when you go on the other side with the struggles with Billy calling plays. So to go from that start of a tenure to now you're going to be working with Buster Faulkner calling plays on the offensive side and Brad White doing it on the defensive side, a much better setup and situation for Jon Sumrall as a first-year head coach.
Yeah, these are two guys that, obviously the Kentucky staff, Mark Stoops was let go. Brad White probably could have picked the school he wanted to go to. Buster Faulkner had other options, and we'll get into this on the Gators.
A lot of OC openings.
Not only that, but group of 5 head coach openings
Yeah,
too.
that's
So,
right.
yeah. So Buster Faulkner, here's some numbers. You're looking for numbers. Under Buster Faulkner, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets have utilized the unique dual threat skill set of quarterback Haynes King the past few seasons. Tech currently is 28th in scoring and 12th in total yards. Faulkner has been the OC for the Jackets the past 3 seasons. In 2024, they were only 64st in scoring, 28.5. That's still 9 points more than Florida this year, and that was his worst year. The year before that, though, they were 43rd. Now, here's something to really consider. Okay, 43rd, is that really that good? The year before he arrived, Zach, they were 125th. 125th to 43rd. So you're looking for upward trends. Not everybody. Look, he didn't inherit Tom Brady, 5 all-conference offensive linemen and studs at every position. You have to do with what you have, right? And so head coaches have to project. Okay, Brad White, look what he did at Kentucky. Buster Faulkner, look what he's done at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech a few years ago was 4-8, 7-7 2 years ago, 7-6 or 7-7, 7-6 2 years ago, 7-6 last year. This year, 9 wins, offensive uptick. So that's what you're looking for. Now, here's the other thing. People, if you've watched Georgia Tech, you say, well, they run the ball a lot. I don't know. I'm a Florida fan. I kind of like to see them air it out. Well, they run the ball because Buster Faulkner, Zach, more than anything, is known for this. He's known for, and I've got it, of course, he's got a versatile pro-style hybrid system that integrates spread concepts and heavy run elements, often with a dual threat quarterback. But his core philosophy is what I'm getting from Google, and this is what other people have told me. His core philosophy involves adapting the scheme to best utilize the personnel. Georgia Tech and Florida are not going to have similar personnel, right? It's going to be different, right? So they've got a good running game. Florida had a good running back, but overall the running game numbers weren't that great. So he's going to do different things at different schools with different players. But Jon Sumrall saw enough in him to believe that they could have a balanced offense and utilize the type of athletes that you should be getting at the University of Florida. And again, another hire, Zach, by the way, that's been universally praised by people in football.
Yeah, and I just obviously this is not his first stop either. And there's one stop that I really want to highlight during his tenure, but he's also been the OC at Murray State, Middle Tennessee State. He did it for 1 year at Southern Miss before he went to Georgia and worked with Todd Monken. But I'm very impressed with what he did at Arkansas State. I think the year that everybody needs to look at and get excited about is 2017. That is the year. He started as the OC in 2016, and then he continued in 2017, 2018. And they were really good those last 2 years, but especially in 2017. Now, I will point out, and I want to find it because I think it's important to note, his first year as the OC at Arkansas State, taking over there, he didn't inherit a good offense, and they weren't great his first year. They ranked 93rd in the country in total offense in 2016, his first year as OC. Keith, they jumped from 93rd in the country in total offense his first year to 10th in the country, 10th in the FBS his second year in 2017. They averaged 494 yards per game. But not just that. Not just that in 2017. They also had the 12th highest scoring offense in the nation. They scored 37.8 points per game. But here's where you can get really excited, though, if you're a Florida fan. You were just talking about the rushing aspect of their Georgia Tech scheme and all the things that they do with Haynes King. Well, you don't have to worry about whether he can light it up in the passing game with a quarterback that can throw it. Because in 2017, when they had a top 10 offense and a top 12 scoring offense, they had the number 5 passing offense in the country in 2017. Number 5, Arkansas State was. They threw for 442 yards per game. So they followed that up in 2018 as well. Had the number 17 offense in the country, put up points as well, threw the ball around as well. Like they ranked 21st in the country in passing offense in 2018. So very impressive stint that he had there, in my opinion, at Arkansas State. You know, he goes to Southern Miss for 1 year, and then he spends that time with Todd Monken to get even more, I think, refined as a play caller. And obviously at Georgia Tech, he's been fantastic. So a lot to like about this hire, Keith. I think this is a home run.
Yeah, I'm looking some stuff up here, so bear with me. But he actually.
I lost you.
Here we go.
Oh yeah. So yeah, but obviously it's very impressive when you look at that Arkansas State run. I gotta say, like Georgia Tech, obviously, I think people are familiar with what they've run and what he's been able to do successfully there. But man, to see that type of jump that he made, how prolific they were in the passing game, how many points they put up, how many yards they put up as an offense, that's a lot to like, man. And you're going to bring him here, I think, to do more of that than necessarily what we saw from him at Georgia Tech. I think that, as Sumrall said, he knows that they got to come here with an explosive offense that's going to make plays in the passing game, push it down the field vertically, and score a lot of points. That's the recipe for success when it comes to offense for Florida football.
Yeah, sorry about that, Zach, and everybody listening. I had some technical difficulties there. I hit one button, my music player started. It's always something. It's always something with me and a computer. But no, he has some time at Valdosta State early in his career. Well, what are they known for? Passing. Valdosta State's one of the all-time passing schools with air raid concepts and people like Mike Leach making their way through that area. So, no, I mean, you run the offense based on the personnel. Again, if you're good, you can adapt to your personnel. And that's what they say this guy is. Again, a hire that's universally praised, Zach, by a lot of people. And I think that's important. And again, it was the number one target. He was the number one target. He was the guy Jon Sumrall wanted. You mentioned this, Buster Faulkner wanted by other schools. You and I, in fact, had both heard before we even knew Jon Sumrall was going to be the guy at Florida. We had heard that, hey, don't be surprised if Buster Faulkner ends up at Auburn, if Jon Sumrall ends up as the head coach at Auburn, or even if DJ Durkin ended up as the head coach at Auburn. So that's two different head coaches that apparently thought, hey, this is the guy they want. We've heard that other major schools, and some of it's unverified, so I don't just want to throw out names of schools, but we've heard other major schools had inquired as well. So, you not only have to identify a guy that's your top candidate, you got to win him over, especially if they have options. Buster Faulkner had options. Florida, what did Jon Sumrall say at his press conference? I picked Florida, because he wanted everybody to know that he picked Florida over Auburn and probably Ole Miss. But he said also, and they picked me. I'm glad they picked me, but I picked them too. Same thing with Buster Faulkner. It works both ways. And this staff is starting to look like, and again, we only have a few names. We've heard other names, but only, obviously the coordinators are confirmed. But this is starting to look like one of those staffs in the early 80s, Zach, when Florida was just starting to get rolling, where you had a young Mike Shanahan as your offensive coordinator. You had guys like Mickey Andrews and Zaven Uralian on the defensive staffs. And actually, he might have been in the late 80s, but it's starting to look like this could be a really strong staff, a mixture of guys like Faulkner and White that are already established. And we think probably some up-and-comers as well, because all good coaches know you got to get the next stars on your staff too. So
right.
It looks like it's taken shape here. Zach, what's next? What do you want to do?
We got one more ad read, and then we'll kind of touch on personnel. Obviously, that now becomes the focus for Jon and his staff. But I'm sure once Jon got done signing that class this week, and once he'll get done with that championship game on Friday night, he'll be able to kick his feet up, Keith, and enjoy an ice-cold Modelo, because college football season is Modelo season. If you're listening to this right now, it means it's time for a reward. Reward your full-time fandom with an ice-cold Modelo. Modelo is the official beer sponsor of the college football playoff. Gator Nation, you deserve a Modelo. And I will say, definitely from watching his introductory press conference and some of the other interviews that I've seen with Jon this week, it's clear that my man likes a cold beer, Keith.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I think everybody needed a cold beer or two or three or four after the last several weeks. It was long. So this week, Jon Sumrall, this is kind of cool, man. I mean, the guy's coaching a game Friday night, right? And yet he's trying to also keep Tulane's class together, because you got to respect that him and Tulane and Florida were able to work all this out, that he could continue to coach and continue to help Tulane build what they were building there. He hasn't just left them by the wayside and vice versa. So helping them finish off a class Tulane, but also trying to continue to hold on to the class that Billy Napier's staff put together at Florida. And they did an outstanding job. He had a Zoom call with recruits Sunday. I believe he might have had some one-on-one FaceTimes with a lot of guys too, working together with the people that are still at UF. Look, not all of Billy Napier's staff has left. Most of them are still there working hard, and everybody working together for this one singular goal to finish off this class. And they did an unbelievable job, quite frankly. As we record this, Zach, Florida's got the number 13 class in the country. And they, again, like you mentioned earlier in the show, they didn't lose too many guys, 1 or 2 guys. That's it.
2 guys. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, and quite frankly, one of them.
And one of them was the second lowest rated player in the class.
Yeah. And quite frankly, it was a tight end. Okay. So the deal with that is that, when something like that happens, there are some positions that may not fit your offense. So who knows how that's going to work out. But Carson Baker.
And then obviously the other decommitment was Baker. And if Florida keeps Jaden Baugh, which we'll address here in a moment, if there's any position where they can afford to take a loss in recruiting, it's running back. That's right.
And Carson Baker out of Georgia, who ended up with Texas A&M. But overall, an outstanding job holding on to some big-name guys. Kendall Gervil's a 4-star defensive lineman from Fort Myers. Zach, he's a guy that can play over the center as a 0 technique or that, 3 technique, 4-eye kind of guy next to. He can play a lot of different things, a big body. The other one that was really big, Davian Gross, receiver.
That was the one for me. Yeah. I mean,
out of Texas.
I think he was one of the highest rated recruits on the last staff's board. He was the number 1 receiver that they wanted. And I thought, man, when they lost or when they had a coaching change, he was going to be hard to keep. And they kept him.
Well, like we said on our recruiting wrap-up, National Signing Day wrap-up show yesterday, this was a lot of people doing a lot of things. You have to also credit Florida's NIL. There's so many people.
That's why a lot of them stuck.
That's right. You got to look. I mean, it takes a village. I said it really does. So credit to all them. But it's a solid plus.
And the Gary Condrens and Hugh Hathcocks of the world. Let's get specific.
That's right. Well, listen, man, back on October 19th when Billy Napier's fired, we don't know which direction it's going to go. You don't know when they're going to have a new coach. You don't know when they're going to be hired. You don't know who it's going to be. You don't know who's going to try to poach your recruits. And a lot of these unknowns. And again, think about this. Not only did you and me think it might be Lane Kiffin, and the fans thought it might be Lane Kiffin. Well, guess who the recruits thought? It might be Lane Kiffin. And that had to be a blow to some of them when it worked out that it wasn't going to be Lane Kiffin. And yet, and again, that all happened between last Friday and last Sunday, and signing day is Wednesday to Friday of the following week. And lo and behold, all but 1 guy, or 2 guys are going to end up, in the class. And so they had their worlds rocked too. So a lot of good work by a lot of people. It's a solid class. Hey, listen, not long before we started recording this show today, Zach, the 4-star quarterback commit in the class, Will Griffin, was named the Gatorade State Player of the Year. He's got over 12,000 career passing yards. You've got a local kid. I love it when they got local flavor because it means more to those kids more often than not, Zach. Gainesville Buchholz receiver Justin Williams. How about this stat? Last year as a junior, he was the first player in over 2 decades since the great Devin Hester in the state of Florida to have 1,000 yards receiving and 1,000 yards rushing in the same season. So how did he back that up? Another 1,000-yard receiving season, and Buchholz is in the state semifinals again. Outstanding players from top to bottom in the class, a bunch of good offensive linemen, developmental types, but that's okay. That's okay. They've got the bodies. They've got the frames. Now it's up to the next staff to work and develop those guys. You don't normally ask your offensive lineman to play for a couple of years anyway. Some good defensive line prospects. Kevin Ford, a big one out of Texas. Jaraylon McCoy, Zach, a big one out of Tupelo, Mississippi. I think his team just played that kid Knox Kiffin's team a week ago. So a lot of stuff, a lot of good things going on. Transitional class currently ranked, as we record, 13th in the country. And
they kept Hall.
That's right. Caden Hall, safety out of the Panhandle of Florida, 4-star safety, 4-star cornerback C.J. Hester out of Cocoa. How about this one? 4-star cornerback C.J. Bronaugh out of Windermere, Florida. He's the fastest player in the class and maybe I'd say probably one of the 10 fastest recruits in the country. So no 5-stars, but a lot of quality 4-stars and some good 3-stars, Zach. I'll give you one name here, Desmond Green, 3-star interior offensive lineman from South Carolina. We always say, don't just look at the ranking, look at who you beat to land a kid. Florida beat Georgia head-to-head for that kid. Forget about that 3-star ranking. Desmond Green had a 4-star ranking with the boards, with the staffs of both Georgia and Florida. So a lot of good things. Transitional classes, you look at the last couple, Napier's first year, Dan Mullen's first year, pretty good outside the top 15, like in that, I want to say 17 to 20 range. This one right now is solidly in the top 15. So that's improvement. And again, credit the former staff, but credit Jon Sumrall, Cole Hurd, who's his GM at Tulane, working, both sides right now. Credit all those people. A lot of people deserve it.
Hey, Keith, in all your years covering recruiting, can you think of a transition class that kept this many commits?
It's, you never.
Or should I say had this few decommits?
You
usually have more turnover, and you usually don't keep this many guys.
Well, you do, and it's, of course, on the spot. If I had a couple hours to go back and look, I could come up with something. I can't think of one. There may be, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. But look, for comparison's sake, now this is a little bit the same, but a little bit different. Penn State fired James Franklin right around the same time Florida fired Billy Napier. Now, they did not have a coach on National Signing Day. They hadn't hired anybody yet. I think they signed 2 guys. They were dropping like flies. But they also had James Franklin at Virginia Tech
coaching them.
All of them. Yeah. But still, I mean, now 2 would be the extreme, right? That's the extreme on the other end. But to only lose a couple of guys is significant. And by the way, we need to point out, yes, they had people coming after them. Janari Carr, offensive lineman from Ocala, plays down at IMG Academy in Bradenton. He visited Tennessee just a weekend ago. KJ Ford out of Texas. He had a lot of schools after him. Davian Gross
had Oklahoma.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not like now some of them had more competition than others. Caden Hall, Georgia Tech. I think LSU popped in at the last minute. Jaraylon McCoy, the defensive lineman out of Mississippi, is probably a guy that could go just about anywhere in the country. So it's one thing if you're holding on to guys that nobody else wants, let's say, but the vast majority of these guys, if they wanted to look around, if they honestly wanted to look around and go somewhere else, probably could have, and not just some regular old school, probably pretty good ones, to be honest with you. So we'll see. Look, we don't, just like with Jon Sumrall, we don't know how it's going to turn out. We're just telling you what's happening, day by day here. Recruiting, you never know. We'll know. Ask us in 3 years.
But man, listen, to hire a coach 3 days before signing day and then sign a top 15 class.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard. That you don't get much better than that.
Well, some of those guys, Zach said they were on that FaceTime call or that Zoom call with Jon Sumrall last Sunday. They were impressed. They were impressed. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how anybody could listen to the guy and not be impressed. And again, we don't know what that's going to translate into. But if you're just listening to the guy talk, what are you looking for in a coach? You kind of go in the opposite direction of what your former coach was. So Billy Napier I wouldn't say he was low energy. That's kind of an unfair critique. But when he spoke, he was very even keeled. Well, Jon Sumrall's sort of bouncing off walls and a little bit, a little bit different there. So,
and now obviously as we, wrap up this show, the thing that we're going to be tracking moving forward is what's going to happen with roster retention. And now he knows who he's kept on board from a recruiting class standpoint. There'll be some more probably additions the second signing period. But now everything gears toward roster retention until the portal opens on January 2nd. By the time we get there, Sumrall and his staff will know who's leaving and who's staying. But that's going to now get determined in the weeks to come and in the days to come, honestly. Obviously, we mentioned Miles Graham earlier. Like, that was determined his introductory presser. And look, I asked Miles during the season if he intended to stay, and he said he did. So, again, it's not like it was groundbreaking that he come out and did it. I just think the way that he, quote, committed to Jon and in the manner in which he did it was, I think it spoke to the impact he made in his introductory presser. Now we got to wait for everybody else. I think the biggest name is Jaden Baugh. Jon Sumrall, that was the only player that he referred to specifically in his introductory press conference. It was funny too, because he did mention the young receivers, and he mentioned some killers on defense, and he mentioned the running back. He did not mention his quarterback, DJ Lagway. DJ was in the room. That is obviously one that we're going to be monitoring as well. Look, we put out during the season on the Gators Online message board, I said, hey, man, the Sharks are circling. I said way back then that this guy was going to have suitors and we still expect that to be the case. But at the same time, like, what is his value going to be at Florida moving forward, given the season that he just had? Look, he threw the most interceptions in the SEC, and he had a tough year. So, I would assume, I'm just assuming, but I would assume that he's probably not going to make as much money as he made last year, that his contract is probably going to be restructured to have it be more incentive based. And I'm not sure how all that stuff works, but like, he's also going to have other schools coming through that might offer him more money than what he's been making or what he's going to make at Florida, despite his struggles this past year. So he's going to be a fascinating one to watch. I think Jaden Ball is as well. Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown III, like, all these guys are getting offers. And, Florida is going to have to pony up with some of them and pay them. And then other ones, they're going to have to see if they can come to a price that works. And if it doesn't, there's going to be some turnover, and there's going to be some attrition. But I think they know who are the key players to keep on staff. And right now, those conversations, Keith, are being had.
Yeah, and so you're talking about DJ Lagway. So there's some unknowns here. We don't know what Jon Sumrall thinks. We don't know what his vision of DJ Lagway is. We don't know,
or his quarterback position.
That's right. We don't know what Jon Sumrall and Buster Faulkner want out of the quarterback position. I mean, we know they want him to win and succeed and throw a lot of touchdowns, but we don't know specifically what they're looking for from that guy. We don't know what Buster Faulkner thinks about DJ Lagway. We don't know what DJ Lagway thinks about Jon Sumrall.
We don't know what quarterback interest Florida could get from the portal.
We don't know what DJ Lagway thinks about Buster. I almost called him Buster Sumrall, Buster Faulkner. So there's a lot of unknown variables here. The portal window opens up the first week in January, and we'll have to see how it all plays out. You're right, Zach. There's going to be people, with DJ. I talked to some people, and you do too, and we've all heard the same thing. Yes, he didn't have the greatest season, but most people do think that all the missed time certainly was a major factor there. But the coaches I know in the industry still swear there's a lot of talent there. But the question is, the Florida staff has to decide, does that talent mold with what we're going to be trying to accomplish as a program moving forward? And you just don't know.
And depending on what type of offers are out there for him, is Florida willing to match that?
That's right. I mean,
we don't know.
But Florida, this is a weird case because Florida had a lot of guys do good things this year, Zach, that probably deserve raises. But at the end of the day, they still won 4 games. They won 4 games. I mean, you can't give raises to all 22 starters. I mean, you won 4 games, okay?
Yeah.
So there's a lot to – and by the way, a new staff is going to probably have some different NIL valuations of an old staff. What do we as a staff prioritize, right? Maybe we have a higher –
and there's a new GM too.
Correct. What do we prioritize? Maybe they may say, okay, maybe their philosophy is going to be more building the team from the inside out. The priority of the dollars may go more toward the interior guys. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. Obviously we're making calls every day. I don't want anybody to think we're not working here, Zach. But again, we just don't know. The staff is really just starting to come together. A lot of these things won't be answered for several weeks. So it's an intriguing time. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, it is. We'll be following it all at Gators Online, and we just had a great special that ran over Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Had a bunch of people come and join the site and get to be a part of our community now. If you guys aren't there, make sure you are, because there's going to be so much news coming with the staff being put together, players committing to staying, transfer portal. We'll be all over it. So make sure you guys can get in the door too for just $1. So
that's right. If you like what we're doing, hit the like button and the subscribe button down below. And speaking of new subscribers, Zach, I'm not going to throw any names out there, but I'll just say this. There's more former players on our message board now than there were just a couple weeks ago. And when I say former players, I mean, there's a few heavy hitters. They're in there. They're not mixing it up, but they're in there watching. They're in there watching. They better be on the best behavior. Okay.
No doubt. No, we appreciate everybody that followed along during the search. It was grueling at times. It was fun for Keith and I. His Twitter was on fire so much that he got hacked.
I'm having a bad week with computers. Before we recorded the show, during the recording of this show, It's been rough. But anyway, Zach,
Yeah,
that'll do it.
any of our listeners out there that work for Elon, please help my guy Keith out.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sell you all Bitcoin. Let's put it that way, okay? All right. For Zach Albaverdi, I am Keith Niebuhr. This was the Gators Online Show. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great weekend, and we'll do it again soon.